5 things that you need to know to start a good comic book collection. Hey, welcome to Generation Geek. I'm Jack. Today, I'd like to talk to you guys about comic books. The easiest way to do this, there's 5 things, and I'll list them and then we'll talk about them as we go, right? There's condition, edition, scarcity, value, and creative team. Let's start with condition, right? The first thing when you're collecting any type of art is what condition is it in? So we're talking about condition. You want a book that looks, feels good. The staples, right, aren't broken, right? The spine isn't cracked. You want something that looks and feels good. If you're in a store, that's great, right? You can take the comic and you can look at it. You can see what kind of condition it's in. If you're not in a store, if you're buying something online, one of the things to be aware of when you're dealing with the rare book industry, and comic books are certainly rare books, fine is the best it can be. Right? If you see something that says fine, that's great. With comic books, you might get mint or near mint. Right? That's going to tell you something. Good is not. If somebody quotes, is listing the description, listing the condition of the book as good, be careful. If you're buying online, always ask to see copies or see photographs of the actual book. This is Echolands. Here, I'll pull this out here. This would be a mint book, right? We can see it here. This is also kind of interesting in that it's done sideways, right? The staples are on the side here. This one also happens to be signed by the artist J.H. Williams III, right? But this is absolutely a mint comic, right? It's something, right? It's almost that it's never been read. You always want to look at what kind of condition the book is in. And again, when you're buying one, always buy the best you can afford, right? When it comes to value, as far as that goes, buy the best that you can afford. Sometimes what'll happen is you'll see the same book on sale for different prices. That price variation comes from the condition. That's something to be aware of, right? We're dealing with that physical artifact of that particular copy of that particular book. Other things that can change the value is, does it have the original materials with it? The 80s, the late 80s, the early 90s, they did all sorts of weird promotional things. They would do 3D covers where the book would come in a plastic bag with a 3D with 3D glasses. So if you're selling that book, or if you're buying that book, you want it with the original 3D glasses. Oftentimes you'll see unopened, right? Is it in the poly bag? There was a series of comics where it was a surprise which cover you'd get, and so the bag was black, and you wouldn't know, and they had several different covers. The other thing that might happen, right, and I'll show you this with this particular comic, right, is it signed, here you can see, right, signed by Tony Isabella, who is the writer of this particular comic. That's also part of the condition. So that's condition. Edition, right? The edition of the book, well, that's something else entirely. The earlier editions, that it is, the first print runs, those are more valuable. With comics, it's a little bit harder to tell first and second editions. I remember, and I don't have my copies with me, but there was a comic from the late 80s called The Killing Joke, right? Batman's The Killing Joke. Great Joker origin story. And that went into multiple printings. It was written by Alan Moore, drawn by Brian Boland, and it's a fabulous book. As it went through multiple printings, what they did was they changed the color of the lettering on the cover. As you look at them, you might find ones that are green or yellow or pink or red coloring, and those are all later editions. So you want to find the earliest edition you can, if possible, right? You don't want reprints. You don't want the collected editions, the omnibus editions. You want the earliest edition that you can get of the particular book, right? That's going to have more value to you. It's the first time that these things see print, right? Fantastic Four #1 has value because it's Fantastic Four #1. It's the first time the Fantastic Four ever appeared, right? Amazing Fantasy #15 is the first time Spider-Man appeared. Action Comics #1, first time Superman appeared. Now, that same story of Superman's origin appears in Superman #1, which came out about a year later. But it's not as valuable as Action #1, even though it's the same story, right? So you want to look for those early editions. Next thing coming up is Scarcity. How many copies are there? I just mentioned Action Comics #1. Action #1 is incredibly valuable because there aren't many of them left. It came out in 1938, and comics at that time cost a dime. They were 10 cents, and they got thrown away. They were used to line the bottom of the bird cage. They used them to wrap fish. They were thrown away when you were done reading them. They weren't considered collectibles at the time. And so there's very, very, very few copies left. Later books, right, in the 90s, the 2000s, they would print up 1 million copies of a comic, and everybody would buy them thinking, right, it's the first one of whatever, and they would all buy them and store them away. Not as much value because there's a lot of them on the market. It's the stuff that you don't know about, the stuff that nobody saved, that becomes valuable. So that's scarcity. The next thing up is the idea of value. Now, when I say value, I'm not talking about monetary value, although that's part of it, but it's the value of the book to the wider world. We often talk about Hulk #180 or #181, which are the first appearances of Wolverine. You can have a question there, right? Is it better to have Hulk #180, where Wolverine appears in the last panel? It's the first time we've ever seen him, right? But he's only in one panel. Or, right, Hulk 181, where you get the first battle. He appears throughout the entire issue. Right? And there's debates ranging as to which one might have more value to the character. Is it that first appearance, that very, very first appearance where we see him? Or is it his first full issue appearance? And ultimately, it's up to you. You know, it's what works for your collection. Do you like Wolverine? Then maybe you want both of them. Sometimes in the Frank Miller run of Daredevil, you can talk about the fact that he was supposed to stop his run with the death of Elektra. It turned out that he did an extra issue. Now that issue, is that part of the Daredevil run? You know, part of Frank Miller's run? Well, it is, but does it have the same kind of importance as the Elektra run? Maybe not, right? So it depends, right? Even though it's the same creative team, it might not have that same intrinsic value to the world at large. The last thing really, and with comic books, it's different than almost any other form of art, is you're looking at the creative team. What artist is drawing it, right? I just mentioned Frank Miller doing Daredevil, right? He wrote and drew those Daredevil issues. And because it's Frank Miller, that's important. When I was a teenager and I was collecting Ghost Rider, one of my collections was to get every appearance of the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. And now Ghost Rider has had several different people over time, right? There was Danny Ketch and a couple of others who took on the mantle of Ghost Rider. But for me, it was always Johnny Blaze, who's a motorcycle riding stuntman. And for a while, he was in a group book called The Champions. There's 18 issues of The Champions, and I was collecting those. And I went into a comic book store. I don't know, I was 17. And I went into a comic book store, and I wanted to buy a couple of issues. And the guy behind the counter said, these are good. They're burn art. I was like, what's burn art? I didn't know, right? I found out, right? Burn art meant that the art was by John Byrne, right? Now, John Byrne later on became a huge superstar artist. He took over the X-Men where Chris Claremont was writing. He created Alpha Flight. He did an amazing run of Superman. But John Byrne was at that point was an up-and-coming artist. And so when I was being sold those, I got extra value for having John Byrne art in those particular books. And that's something you want to take a look at. I've got here, let's see, right, I mentioned before, right here, Echolands, right, with J.H. Williams. This is also a J.H. Williams signed, right? This is Batman in black and white. J.H. Williams is a award-winning artist. I love his work, and any chance to get a copy of his, especially signed, I take it. But also you look at something like this, right? This is Man and Superman. It's a 100-page, it's a 100-page book, but it's written by Marv. Well, let me take it out. Let's do this. We'll take it out. this is Man and Superman by Marv Wolfman and Claudio Castellini. All right, now this is 100 pages with Marv Wolfman here. I'll give you a little bit closer here, right? It's Marv Wolfman, and I love Marv Wolfman. He created some amazing characters. He created the Teen Titans, the new Teen Titans with George Perez. He created the character of Cyborg, who's shown up in the Justice League movies. He created Blade, right? You've seen the movies, right? So Marv is a legend in comics, and so a new opportunity. This came out a couple of years ago, and a new opportunity to see a Marv Wolfman written Superman story. Absolutely, that's something I wanted in my collection, right? So I went and picked up a copy. Right, and this is it, right? These are the things that you want to look for, right? You want to look for the condition. What condition is it in? Is it good? Is it the best you can afford? Which edition is it? Is it an early edition? Is it a later reprint? Is it scarce? Is it something that anybody can get their hands on at any time? Or is it something you might have to seek out? Now, certainly in today's age of the internet, it becomes easier to buy things. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet because I'm old. We didn't have the internet. And so for me, it was a lot of every time I would visit a new town, I would go and find the comic book stores. And I would always check out my comic book stores, my local comic book stores, and check to see if they had these issues. And I had a list of what I needed, right? As I said, I collected all of the Johnny Blaze Ghost Riders. And I started collecting with issue number 35. That was my first one. It's one of the first comics I remember buying with my own money. So I started with number 35, which meant I needed to get numbers 1 through 34, as well as a couple of issues before that where the character first appeared. So it took me a while to get them, right? Several years, in fact, to finally assemble that whole collection. But I've got it now. And certainly when I was collecting Ghost Rider, he wasn't very important because Nicolas Cage hadn't made movies about him. He hadn't appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But now Ghost Rider is a much more popular character. And those comics have since increased in value considerably, right? But I didn't get them for the value. I got them because they were stories that spoke to me, right? They were issues that spoke to me. And so because of that, I have what I consider a great collection. So that's it, right? That's really, it's 5 things to look for when collecting comics. But again, when you're making your collection, make it about you, right? These are just the things to look for in the particular issues that you're buying. But the collection is yours. It's something that you're going to take out and you're going to show your friends, and you're going to have to explain what it is. I mean, if you see a Picasso on the wall, somebody's going to go, that's a Picasso, and they know, right? But if I pull out Ghost Rider number 18 and they go, it's signed, I say it's signed, they're going to be like, so what? Now I'm going to have to explain what it is and what that means. Okay, I didn't talk about protection. There's one other thing to mention. Well, a couple of things to mention. We'll edit this together, right? If you want to learn more about how to protect and preserve your comics, we've done another video about it here. So, as I say, for me, the collection is about you, and it's about actually having that really cool artifact from a time and a place that means something to you. So enjoy your comic collection. If you like what we're doing here at Generation Geek, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We're going to have many more videos telling you about comic books, telling you about the individual creators, telling you about all kinds of stuff. So we look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions, hit us up below. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day. Keep reading comics.